of the Mimer on page um, Aleph, the bottom of the page, and we were speaking about Oirin Sof Lamata Mata Lintachlis. We're trying to explain, we're going through explaining what does it mean, how low, what's this Lamata Mata Lintachlis that the Oirin Sof is there. So we after explaining how we cannot say the Eretz of Lamata Mata Tachlis is referring to the worlds of Atzilus and definitely not higher than Atzilus. It must refer to worlds inside in the worlds of Biyah. So now he goes on, the Rebbe goes on to analyze another detail that the Friedrich Rebbe says in his mind. Line 29, page Dalet, page Yud Dalet. The Maimer of the Friedrich Rebbe, Yud Gimel continues over there. When it comes to the garments of Bri Yitzir that we said that the worlds of Bri Yitzir are levushim, are garments to the world of Atilus. So it says about them, the Menayu Parch Nishmas Lebnei Nosh, that from those levushim, it flies out, it comes out, neshamas to people. Shehem on neshamas. This is the level of neshamas. So, like we have this in Pascal Yo. So the question is, why is this necessary? What's the point of bringing this in? All we're trying to bring out is Lamata Mata the Intachlis, that it comes down, the Eretz Sof is also in Biyah. Why is it necessary to emphasize that the Levushim of Biyah, the Bri, Yitzir Asiya, and the Shamas come out from there? What's the negate? If Shlomo would be Yonim, we could explain we could say concerning the explanation of the continuation of the topic. What does it matter that the neshamas come from there? Since the general theme that's speaking about Nesamshach of the Friedrich Rebbe of the Yartzach, it speaks about Neshamas Israel and their avoida in drawing down the Kustani below. Shari Iker Shchina b'tachtoinim was the top of page as well because the Iker Shchina was down below. And the Hainu Oilam Hazeh Shua Tachtin Madrega Shein Tachtin Lamata Menukim Avur Betanya. We're talking about this world that is the lowest level, that there's nothing else lower than it. That's like it's explained in Tanya. And also, like the Maimer, also uses the expression of Baloshna, Maimer Madregas, Hayois Rakroinus, Hayois Takroinus, that's bringing down the Elikus in the most lowest and the most final level, the last most levels, the most lowest levels. Therefore, we must say, all matters are to be found also by Yidden, that they also have reflected in them the idea of the low world. So in other words, it's not just enough that we establish that there's the lower worlds of Bri Yitzir Asiya, but we need to establish the connection or the level of those worlds the way they are by Yid. Therefore, he explains in Levushim the Bri Yitzir Asiya, Shaykh Shams Yisrael, that the idea of the garments of Bri Yitzir Asiya is associated with Shams Yisrael. Because how does it connect the worlds of Bri Yitzir Asiya to Neshamas Yisrael? Because he says these garments of Bri Yitzir Asiya are the source from which it fly out the Neshamas. Then the Friedrich Rebbe goes on to explain the association between Neshamas Yisrael and Bri Yitzir Asiya. Mamsh Levayat, 9:10, continues to explain the Bri Yitzir Asiya. The majority of neshamas are neshamas of the worlds of Bri Yitzir Asiya. Only one in a generation. In the early generations are neshamas atzilus. Neshamas and neshamas the Bri Yitzir Asiya, but the majority of the neshamas are neshamas of Bri Yitzir Asiya. So now the Rebbe is going to elaborate again on this last final quote from the Friedrich Rebbe's Maimer, that the Friedrich Rebbe emphasizes that only one in a generation is a neshama d'atzilus. So it goes on line 14. The idea behind this is Like the Alter Rebbe explains that greater length in Likutei Torah. Nishmas Moshe Shorsha Mi'atzmius Chachma Ilah. The neshama of Moshe, its root is from the essence of Chachma Ilah. We know it's brought down. Moshe Bechlal has to do with the level of Chachma Ilah. It says Moshe. Why was it called Moshe? Because I drew him from the level of water. Water is associated with the level of Chachma, but in Chachma itself, it comes from the etzem of Moshe Rabbeinu. Comes from the etzem of Chachma Ilah, and the etzem of Chachma Ilah is the Mikoir HaTorah. It comes from a level that's the source of Torah. So the Rebbe emphasizes and says, Hainu Lamayla Ma Torah, that the neshama of Moshe Rabbeinu comes from a level that's higher than Torah. Why do we say that Torah is not as high as the etzem of Chachma Ilah? Shari Chachmas HaTorah, he nobles Chachma Shalmayla, because the Chachma of Torah is called the things that fall off of the Chachma of above. That which falls off the Chachma from above, like leaves falling from a tree, that's called Torah. So therefore, now we can understand why it was Moshe that gave the Torah. Moshe was not the one that gave the Torah because he is a lower level in Torah, and that's why he brought it down. Just the opposite. Because of this, the Torah was given through Moshe, because Moshe is higher than Torah. Therefore, he's the one that's able to deliver the Torah. He's the one that's able to give it. This is similar to what the Rebbe says in a different place, that for a person to give a bracha, they have to be in a higher source than the place where the bracha is coming from, and that's why they can give a bracha. Where do we see that Moshe was higher even than the Torah, and he's from the Atzmis of Chachma Ilah? That's why it says Moshe Kvad Peh Kvad Losh. He was heavy of mouth and heavy of tongue or language. Meaning, the simple pshat means it was difficult for him to speak. Zohar explains what was the difficulty. The difficulty was not a physical handicap, it was a spiritual handicap. Yisuf Zohar, like it explains in Zohar, he was heavy of mouth or difficult of mouth. Mouth indicates the level of Torah that's called Torah. The Torah has to do with the mouth, the oral Torah. Kvad Loshen, and heavy of language, concerning the written Torah. We know the written Torah is important, the language in every word. And when we say that he was heavy of mouth and heavy of language, that means it was difficult for him to deal with Torah Shabbat and Torah Shabbat. What does that mean? What was the difficulty? He wasn't able to lower himself that the Torah should come from him, that's the level of Torah, that's only the noblest of Chacham. Therefore, the sum total, what we see over here is that Moshe Rabbeinu was so high, he was the etzem of Chachma Ilah, even higher than Torah. Once we see that by Moshe Rabbeinu, so he also expresses the idea of neshamas divided by others as well. Line 26. There's also very high neshamas in other times that they have in them from the level of Moshe. This is what Rav Safra told the Rava when he was like very excited and very impressed by something that the Rava said. Moshe Shapir Kamrit. Moshe, you said well. What type of expression is it? That Moshe, you said well, because in truth, even though his name was not Moshe, but he embodied an aspect of Moshe. So therefore, we find the idea that even in later generations, there could be very high neshamas that will embody in them the level of Moshe. Now he's going to explain these levels of the neshamas of Moshe, or the levels of the high neshamas that are called neshamas, that's Silas. The Heiman neshamas nekrois achim v'reim Lamalkim. These are neshamas that are called brothers and friends and fellows to the Eibush. What does it mean that they are brothers, siblings, and fellows to the Eibush? Behind the level of Malkim is referring to Zod Atzilus, the Midas of Atzilus. And being that they come from such a high level, so just like you could have siblings because they both come from the same father, so these great neshamas came from Chachma, Bina, and the Zohar Malchus comes from Chachma Bina. So that's the level of Malkim that they are brothers with. Top of page Zayin V'Hainu. These high neshamas came from a union, from a mating of Chachma Bina Vatzilus, both father and mother. Therefore, they are called brothers to Zeir Ampin of Atzilus. And again, they are still higher than the level of Torah because their root is in the level of Chachma. It's higher than Torah. That is all the neshamas that are called Achim V'Reim, the rare neshamas that are from such a high level. Neshamas and Neshachim is just like there's a union and a mating between Chachma and Bina Atzilus to create the Midas of Atzilus and to create these very high neshamas. So too there's a mating of Zeir Anpin, the Midas of Atzilus and Malchus Atzilus, and they create neshamas as well. Their neshamas that they create is neshamas that are created into and of the level of the world of Bria. So those neshamas are not the neshamas agvois that we're talking about, that there's only chad bedar. Then the Rebbe says, "V'achol fi mashin is bar v'makom mach shagam nezivug zeir ampin v'nuk v'datzil." My Lord, the neshachim gam ki lefam neshamas gvois ma'od on the Christ neshamas datzilus mamish. Even though it's explained in a different place, that even from the union of Midas and Malchus of Atzilus are also born and also are drawn down very, can sometimes be drawn down very high neshamas that are called neshamas Atzilus mamish. So why am I limiting this description of neshamas gevoyos to those that are specifically Achim V'Reim, those that are specifically coming from Chachma and Bina and so on? The Rebbe says, "Mikol Makim still at all, since the root of these high neshamas, even though they're still high neshamas, and we're still calling them neshamas datzilus, but since they are coming from the mating and union of the Midas and Malchus of Atzilus, in Kain einon ella tipa achas hanimsheches mimoichin dezeir ampin v'nuk. So then they are only like one droplet that comes from the brain of Midas and Malchus, just like in the physical union of a husband and wife that create children. There's one droplet that comes from the brain, and that creates the child. The same thing, there's only one droplet that's coming from the brain. And Torah, even though we said it's Noivus Chachma Shalom Maila, but when it comes to the Chabad in the Midas, and the Chabad of Nukva over there, in that level of Chabad, Torah is the etzem of Chabad. So therefore, in Torah, in comparison to the neshamas that come from Yichud Zun, Torah in comparison to even those high neshamas that come from Atzilus, but since they're coming from a Yichud Zun, the Torah is higher. And how much more so when we talk about the neshamas of Bia, Valachas Kam Vakama, Kol Shar, and neshamas, the Bri Yitzirasi and Mamish. How much more so all the rest of the neshamas that are neshamas of the worlds of Bri Yitzirasi and Mamish. The Vada Shemilamatim and Torah, surely that they are lower than the Torah. As Amru concerning this, the Chazal said, Yisrael, Miskashron Be'eraisom, that the Yidden need to bind themselves with the Torah because they are lower than the Torah, so they need to connect themselves to the Torah, which is higher, because we're talking about the majority of the neshamas, that the Torah is higher. This is also what he explains in the Maimed. Majority of neshamas are neshamas of Bia. Only one in a generation, in the early generations, are considered neshamas datzilus. The frat b'der is saying the way This he said, but there is a shining in the early generations. How much more so, and especially in these generations, so it's surely only one in a generation. So now the Rebbe gives an interesting twist and an interesting nuance to the term in the phrase Chad B'Dara. What's the simple meaning of Chad B'Dara means there's a whole generation, and one of these millions of Yidden that live in the generation is a neshama d'Atzilus that's higher than Torah, and so on and so forth. But here he's going to give a deeper idea. I know line 21. This one in a generation means one that upon that one the entire generation stands on. The entire generation is he is equal to the entire generation and supports the entire generation. And we give an example back from Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe, like Moshe and his generation, Shaya Shakul, Keneged, Shishim Ribi B'nai Yisrael. He was the equivalent of all 600,000 Yid. Like explained in a different place. Peter Shakasu, in the explanation of the pasuk, Moshe Rabbeinu said Tasha. He said, "Hanoichi harisis tolam hazeh." That I conceived this entire nation, kasher yisa einig aimis hayonik, that I give birth to him, that I carry him like a nursemaid carries a nursing child. So even though he said it in the way of a question, the Torah has no question marks. Here we're reading it, yes, that Moshe Rabbeinu was like a mother that's conceiving a child. Why is that? Just like a mother, that the child is included and part of the mother, so to Moshe Rabbeinu, who was equal to all the Neshamas Yisrael, had within him all the 600,000 Neshamas. Shem close Yisrael, that is going on the general Klal Yisrael. So that was Moshe Rabbeinu in his times. So too, it's also concerning the expansion of the Moshe Rabbeinu. That's in every single generation. You see Yisrael, the leaders of the Yidden, Kol Nasi v'Nasi B'Doyre, every single leader in his generation. Adlan Sidareno told the leader of our generation that he is equal to the entire generation. Upon him stands the entire generation. I will call on Neshamas B'Doyre, but all the rest of the Neshamas in the generation, and Neshamas the Bri Yitzir Asiyah, these are Neshamas of the worlds of Bri Yitzir Asiyah. And concerning them, we go back to what we said earlier in the beginning of today's shir, concerning those neshamas that are the majority of the neshamas of Bia. It says that he made levushim, which are the worlds of Bia, the menayin parch in nishmas le'nasha, that from those levushim of Bri Yitzir Asiyah fly out the neshamas to all people, that they have to do with the worlds of Bia, not like those extraordinary neshamas are neshamas of Atzilus. Any questions before we go on?
So the ones neshamas of the Atzilus are higher than Torah, or?
So it depends what we mean by neshamas of Atzilus. We spoke about before that there's neshamas Atzilus that are from Yichud Avod, the Yichud, the mating of Chacham Bina. Those are higher than Torah. But the neshamas Atzilus that are from Yichud Zun, that come from a union of Midas and Malchus, those are still sublimated to Torah. Those Torah is still higher than that.
So where the Revam stand?
So from the expression of Chad B'Dara, the idea that it's one in a generation and one upon which the entire generation stands on, he seems to be connecting it with the idea of Vispashtus of the Moshe B'Chol Dar B'Dara, the extension of Moshe in every generation. And therefore, they're on the level of Moshe. And just like Moshe was higher in the Torah, so too, all these people that go into the category of Chad B'Dara, one in a generation, upon which the entire generation stands, are higher than Torah. That's come out from the Hemshech Yonim over here, from the context.
So that includes our Revam?
Yeah, correct. Okay, we're holding line 6 on page Yud Zayin, and he's further going to analyze, take another quote from the Maimer of the Frierdiker Rebbe Eised Gimel. And the Maimer continues, Ella quote, once we've established that the majority of neshamas come from Bri Yitzir Asiyah, so in Bri Yitzir Asiyah itself, neshamas pnimis. The neshamas are the inner level. Malachim chitzaynis, and the malachim are the external level. And the worlds are the external of the external. So now, again, the Rebbe is going to explain what does this matter for the topic under discussion to get into these distinctions between the neshamas and the malachim and the oilamas. All that matters is that in Bri Yitzir Asiyah, the neshamas come from Bri Yitzir Asiyah. Why they have to delineate what level they are in the world. The idea behind this is the l'chura in the movement again is even it's not understood. What does it matter? This idea of where exactly every one of these entities are located and where they get the chayes from. Again, we have to follow what the flow is, what we're talking about. The entire content of the point of the Maimer is the goal is to use the treasure, which the treasure we said is the Oirin Sof, which is the mile and the Ketzel, what is the purpose of the Oitzer? Just like the king gives the treasure so that the soldiers should be able to win the war, the same thing the neshamas are given the Oitzer, so the neshama should be able to fulfill its mission in this world, to transform him, to make from the world the standing shittim wood, in other words, transform the shtus of klippa to shtus of kedusha, and to make kroshim to the mishkan, from the sheker and the falsehood of the world, to make it kroshim, supports, and part of the building of the mishkan. So the question is, the Rebbe says, how can we do so? If we are part of the world, how can we impact the world? Seemingly, the neshamas are also from Bri Yitzir Asiyah, that are only garments. And they are separated. Still in all, only through them, only through neshamas is accomplished the avoida of make from a migdash, and I shall dwell amongst them. How could it be? If we come from the worlds of Bri Yitzir Asiyah, and Bri Yitzir Asiyah is garments, which indicates that something separated from Hashem, not like in Atzilus, where it's it's joined with Eibishter. So how is it possible for us to be able to accomplish this, to take the Oitzer and transform the world into something that's a place where Hashem resides? Concerning this, and to address this, the Frierdiker Rebbe explains, the whole olam va'olam in every single world, the neshamas and pnimis olam. The neshamas are the inner part of the world. Va'olam is atzmam and chitzaynis of chitzaynis, and the worlds itself are the external of the external. Neshamas shem pnimis olam. Therefore, neshamas, that's the inner level of the world. Va'olam milah shlichus va'olam shem chitzaynis of chitzaynis. They affect the fulfillment of the mission in the worlds, that's the external of the external. How did they do so? By the intermediary of the malachim. The malachim are also the literal meaning of the word malach, as we know many times it's used in Chumash to denote messengers. So they are also assisting, I guess, the shlichus of the neshamas, and they are also assisting and helping out that shehem chitzaynis olam. They are the external part of the world. So now he's going to explain some more about the malachim's role over here, that they assist and they are intermediaries between the neshamas and the worlds to be able to impact and transform the worlds. Line 24. Juvenal Peter Sarava Magid, the Bir Maimer Azal, this be understood according to the teaching of the Magid, that the Chazal say, Ein hamalachim oimrim shira, Yisrael oimrim shira. The malachim in Canaan, etc., cannot sing songs of praise to the Eibishter until Yidden say songs of praise. Nemar, like it says in the pasuk, Beron Yachad, when they sing together, the stars of the morning, and the hadar, only afterwards, this is a word added in explaining it, by Yariu Kol Bnei Elokim, that all the sons of Elokim will cry out. This means Boiker is going on. The Yidden are called stars because they are likened to stars, and Bnei Elokim is another term used for Malachim are called Bnei Elokim. So first, the Chazal say there has to be Beron Yachad Chotbim Boiker. First, the Yidden sing praises to Hashem, and only afterwards can the Malachim say their praises to the Eibush. The Tzaddik Lahavin, so the Mezritcher Maggid explained concerning this Maimer Chazal. What's the idea of the waiting that the Malachim have to wait until the Yidden say Shir? So now the Rebbe is going to explain what is it going? What's the question over here? What's the issue over here that he's trying to explain? We can explain this according to the well-known introduction. Yidden were the first that arose in Hashem to be created before all other creation, even before Malachim were created. We know the creation took place through speech, but in the thought, there's already included in it all the 22 letters of speech and all the 5 enunciators that divide the letters into the 5 different categories from which the 5 enunciators come out. From the 5 enunciators is the root of all the letters in the thought is the root of all the letters. A person does not bring out in speech from his mouth if he doesn't think first what he's going to speak. If he does say some speech without thinking, the speech is lacking wisdom, it's lacking knowledge, it's lacking mind and intellect. Nimsa comes out. Yeah, Yisrael on the crime ratios that Yidden are called the ratios. Like we say, the famous pasuk Rashi brings it down in the beginning of Chumash. Ratios to us, they're the beginning, the first of my crop. It's not just that they are higher. Beforehand, we said the shamas are primius, malachim are chitzonius, alumas are chitzonius, but they could be still unrelated one to another. You could say that, let's say, the 5th grade is higher than 4th grade, the 10th grade is higher than 5th grade, but there's no relationship. 10th grade is not something that the students of 10th grade are not the source for the students in 5th grade. But when it comes to neshamas' relationship with everything else, it's just like the relationship of thought and speech. Thought is not just higher than speech. Thought is the source of speech. Therefore, Yidden that come from thought are the root of all the worlds and all the malachim that became revealed through speech. And that is why therefore, the Malachim cannot express any speech without Yidden that are the source for all of them, because they are the primary thought. Nimsa comes out, Gasher Yisrael, Maskilim, Leimer Shira, when Yidden begin to say Shira and praises for Hashem. Yesh Lam Malachim, Koyach Leimer Gamkin Shira. So the Malachim also have the capability to say praises to Hashem. Zel Shenemar, Shir HaShirim. Song of songs. So it's a very interesting Taichi says over here. What's it mean, song of songs? He says, Ritzaynei Loimrat means to say, Shir Shal Yisrael, Goydem Shirim Harbe Shemalachim. The song of the Yidden causes the many songs of the Shal Yoinim of the ones above. That's what it means, the song of songs. Yidden are considered the song of songs, what they sing, because their song is the source of all the other songs. This is also what was explained in the Maim. Shan Shamas, same Pnimi is that the Neshamas, they are the inner level of the worlds of the Yitzir Asiyah. by the apnimius, through the pnimius are affected the matters also in the external part of Bria, which we said before, the Malachim, and even further, and even in the external of the externals, that is the world. Okay, we'll stop over here.